Hi everyone. Today's lesson, or this lesson, is on midpoints, distance, and Pythagorean theorem. Our goals for today, we have two of them, is that number one, I can use the Pythagorean theorem to find the length of segments. So do you know how to use the Pythagorean theorem? Do you know what the Pythagorean theorem is? To find the length of segments. And then the second one is I can use the midpoint formula to find the midpoint of a segment. So yesterday was not using the midpoint formula, it was using the definition of a midpoint to find the length of a segment. This is, do you know the midpoint formula? And can you use that to find the midpoint of a segment? So you can go ahead and pre-rate yourself on those two. I have them separated so that if you feel good about one and not about the other, or if you feel bad about both, it's fine. Let's just get you to feel great about both. Okay. So one thing I want you to notice about this lesson is that the ones that I want you to try, I already have filled in. So when I pause the video and have you try on your Notability document that you've sent to Notability from Schoology, the answer is going to be there. So make sure you pause pretty quickly and then come back, and if you have questions, meet me in the Zoom. Okay. So Pythagorean theorem, if you know the Pythagorean theorem, see if you can answer these questions. So the first one is what kind of triangle, because it says for a blank triangle, do you use the Pythagorean theorem on? The answer is a right triangle. You cannot use it on what's called an oblique triangle, which is a non-right triangle. It has to have a right angle. By this box right here, we know that that is a right triangle. Okay, so if the legs are A and B, so the legs would be the two sides that meet at the right angle. So A and B, these are the two legs. And the hypotenuse is the longest side that's always across from the right angle, that's C. Okay, so what do we know is true? Okay, so we know that if you take the first leg and square it plus the second leg and square it, if you add those up, that's equal to the third leg squared, right? Once again, the hypotenuse is C. This is the hypotenuse, the longest side. That's important to know because it's always equal to the hypotenuse squared, okay? All right, so let's try a couple problems right here. Okay, so solve for the missing side of each triangle by using the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared, okay? So the first thing you should ask yourself, what's missing, A, B, or C? The hypotenuse is missing, so that's C. So we're going to do 7 squared plus 24 squared is equal to C squared. Okay, so now what I don't want you to do is pick up your calculator and tell me the answer is 25. That's not how algebra works. Algebra is showing your work so that if you make a mistake, you can receive partial credit. Most problems are not worth 1 point. So if you have the answer, yeah, you can have your 1 point. But what about the other 2 for your work? You're not going to get those, okay? Even if your answer is right, because we assign points to work. That's something very important for you to know. Okay, so what do I need to do? I need to say what 7 squared is. 7 squared is 49 plus, I need to say that what 24 squared is. 24 squared is 576. You can use a calculator to get that. You can use the square button if you are using your TI 83 or 84 like you're supposed to. You can use this button, which is called a caret, and then to the second power. If you're having problems finding that on your calculator, obviously you can do 24 times 24, or the smarter thing to do is to pause the video, come ask me in Zoom how to do it, or send me an email and ask me how to do it, and I can meet you in a Zoom, or I can explain to you on Remind 101. All right, now I need to solve for C. C is not by itself yet, but this left-hand side, there's like terms that I need to combine. So combining those, I get 625. Once again, you can use a calculator for that. Equals C squared. Okay, we're using algebra to do this. We're not just putting down answers. All right, now I need to know how to get C by itself. How do I get rid of a square? The answer is square root. So I'm going to square root both sides. The square root cancels out the square on this side, and I have just C left. So you can write C right down here in the equal sign right here, or you can put the equal sign on the other side. And then you know what the square root of 625 is. Once again, you may use your calculator. You're going to hit the square root button. If you're having trouble finding it, please come see me in the Zoom and I can help you find it. But don't just say, I'll worry about it later, okay? Because that's what's going to happen on your tests and on your quizzes and on your formatives. And I don't want you to, not know where to find it and then ask me during a formative. I will not answer that type of question on how to use a calculator during the formative. So square root of 625 is 25. Okay, next one. Missing the hypotenuse again. 5 squared plus 8 squared equals c squared. 25 plus 64 equals c squared. Combine like terms. 89 equals c squared. Square root both sides so that you can get c by itself. And you get c is, I put square root of 89 in my calculator and I don't get a beautiful answer. Okay? The directions don't say it here, but I know what the directions on your test would say. It would say round to the nearest tenth. Okay? So round to the nearest tenth. The tenth is 1 decimal place. So look at your calculator, round that answer to the nearest tenth. 9.4. Make sure you're typing these in there. I'll tell you right now, I teach integrated algebra and geometry and I teach pre-calc. When people don't practice using their calculator, they get stuck on the test over calculator issues, which are silly issues to get stuck on. And then teachers will not help during tests about how to use a calculator. So make sure you're practicing them. Okay. Next, we need to talk about distance, okay? So the distance between two coordinate points. So this one says find the distance between 0, 0, and 3, 4. So if you're asking yourself, can I use the distance formula? Of course you can. But what you should notice is that there's graph paper off to the side. Do you have to use the graph paper? Can I just use the distance formula? No, you don't have to use the graph paper. Yes, you can just use the distance formula. But the graph paper is provided, and I think it's easier to use the graph paper for this type of problem. So if it says find the distance, I'm going to graph those 2 points. 0, 0, 3, 4. All right, so now I need to know how far those 2 points are apart. Okay, so I'm going to connect them. All right, if you look, that is an angled measure. If I asked you how far are these 2 points apart, the answer is 3, right? But when it's angled, you can't count that, okay? So what I'm going to do is that I am going to connect these 2 points with vertical and horizontal lines, a vertical line and a horizontal line also, instead of just the direct connection. So I'm going to do a horizontal line going this way, and I'm going to do a vertical line going this way. And yes, you could have done this and this instead. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is notice that I have a right triangle. Do I know the length of this piece right here? The answer is yes. That has a length of 4. Do I know the length of this piece right here? The answer is yes. That's 3. How do I find this side right here? The answer is Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so I'm going to do the Pythagorean theorem. 3 squared plus 4 squared equals c squared. 3 squared is 9 plus 4 squared 16 equals c squared. Combine like terms on the left side. That's 25 equals c squared. Square root to get c by itself. Hopefully you don't need a calculator for this one. If you don't know your perfect squares, make sure that you practice them so that you can get them quickly here. C is 5. All right, next one. Find the distance between the 2 points. With distance, I like to graph it. All right, so -7, -4. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -9. Also, a big thing that I want to point out is if you graph your points wrong, you're going to get a wrong answer, for sure, okay? Unless you do your work wrong also and just by coincidence get the right answer. But I would notice. Okay, here's my right triangle. I could have made it, once again, like before, this way and this way, like I said. But it's just whatever your brain tells you to do at the time. Okay, so I'm going to look to see how long this is right here. Okay, I look at boxes. So notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is a length of 5. This horizontal distance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Notice I'm counting boxes and not tick marks. All right, Pythagorean theorem. It's a right triangle and the hypotenuse is missing. 5 squared plus 12 squared equals c squared. 25 plus 12 squared, 144 equals c squared. A common mistake people do is they put equals and then they add those two and put 169. What happened to c? Where'd it go, right? So make sure you're doing algebraic steps. Equals c squared. Combine like terms. 169 equals c squared. Now you can get c by itself by square rooting. C equals 13. Once again, if you don't know your perfect squares, I would make sure you do know them. If you're like, I just don't know what, I would know up to 15. So I would know what 1 squared's 1, 2 squared's 4, 3 squared's 9, 4 squared's 16, so on and so forth, up to 15 squared. Okay, I moved it too fast. Go ahead and pause the video, try the next two problems on your own, and then you can come back for answers. Okay, so those answers are 10 and 5.8. If you need to pause the video and look at my work, you can. If you're like, oh, I graphed a point wrong, let me move that out that way. That's the problem. If you have questions because you don't know what you did wrong, come see me in Zoom. Okay, next one. Next type of problem. Find the midpoint between each set of points. Okay, now there's graph paper provided again. I'm going to point out that I don't like using the graph paper, okay? I like to use the midpoint formula, just like it says in the goal for today. So think about the middle, okay? If I wanted to know the middle of our ages, my age and your age, okay? How can I do that? Or if I have 2 grades in my class so far, I have a 75% and a 92% on my 2 tests. How can I find my middle grade, my average grade? I add them and divide by 2, right? So if I want to find the middle of these 2 points right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the x's and I'm going to add them and divide by 2, and then do the same thing with the y's. Okay, so the formula is technically x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and then you do the same thing with your y's. y1 plus y2 divided by 2, okay? But I don't write down the formula every single time. I just say what I'm going to do, okay? All right, so I'm going to take my x's and add them. 8 plus negative 2 and divide it by 2. That'll give me my new x value. So my new x value, 8 plus negative 2 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Okay? If you're using a calculator, this is important. Okay, so if you're using a calculator for this problem, because your mental math is a little rusty right now, I want you to type in 2 different things in your calculator. I want you to type in 8 plus negative 2 divided by 2. See what you get as an answer. Bet you it's not 3. Reason why is because your calculator is doing orders of operations. It's dividing by 2 first because it doesn't realize that the 8 plus negative 2 is in the numerator, okay? So if you're using your calculator, make sure you do 8 plus negative 2, enter, divided by 2, enter, so that it knows that you have to add the numerator together first. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing with y's. 2 plus 6 divided by 2. Make sure you're showing this work here, okay? Because once again, if you make a mistake, I need to know what you did wrong. 2 plus 6 is 8. 8 divided by 2 is 4. So the midpoint, make sure you're writing it as a point because it is a point, is 3, 4. If you wanted to check to make sure you did it right, you could always graph it and see. So 8, 2, negative 2, 6. And then you can just see if 3, 4 looks like it's in the middle. It does. So I did it right. All right, we'll try one more, and then you can try the next 2 on your own. Negative 3 plus 7 divided by 2. And then I'm doing 1 plus 5 divided by 2. So there's my work, and now I'm going to write my answer as a point. Negative 3 plus 7 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 1 plus 5 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Here's my answer. I don't have to use this. I don't need it. Okay? All right, go ahead, pause the video, try the next two. All right, here are your answers. I rate it like this, 5 halves 2. But if you wrote 2 1/2, 2.5, comma 0, that's great. If you have questions, see me in the Zoom. All right, one last problem. This one says one endpoint of a segment's 1, 2, and the midpoint's 6, 5. What's the other endpoint? All right, so I'm not asking you for the midpoint. I gave you the midpoint and one of the endpoints. So how do I find the other endpoint? Okay, what I do for this is I draw a picture because I'm a little confused. There's no graph paper, so I'm going to draw a segment. I'm going to draw 2 endpoints, and I got a midpoint, so right in the middle, right here. One of the endpoints is 1, 2, so I'm going to say this endpoint's 1, 2. It says the midpoint is 6, 5, so this is 6, 5. And I don't know what this point is, so I got to figure it out. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I do this, and you could always check your answer when you're done. Okay? Okay, how I do this is I look at my x's. Okay, so here's my x's. This one's at 1. The middle is at 6. So how far is it from the middle? It's 5, right? You would have to add 5 to get there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 5 to get to this x value. So 6 plus 5, that means that that's 11. Okay? Let's try it with the y's. How about you pause the video and try it with the y's? All right, let's see what you got. This one's at 2. This one's at 5. How far are they from each other? 3. I'd have to add 3 to get there, right? So I'm going to add 3 to get here. 5 plus 3 is 8. So my answer is 11, 8. Okay? If I was not sure if I was right, I could always check. I can say this is an endpoint and this is an endpoint, right? 1 plus 11 divided by 2. What's 12 divided by 2? 6. 2 plus 8. What's 2 plus 8? 10. Divided by 2, 5. So I know I did it right. All right, go ahead and re-rate yourself on how you feel about these 2 goals for today. If you're feeling pretty good, go ahead and get started on that homework right away. If you have questions, please meet me in the Zoom and ask. Or if we're out of the Zoom already, send me an email. Let's pick a time and, to meet up and go over this together. Okay? All right, have a great